Hello friends. By the way, I don't know why, but the modern world is full of cruelty, aggression and indifference. There are so many things happening today, and, alas, too often bad things, that it's easy to forget that good things still happen in life. And I think it's no secret that the kindest people in this world are children. They are the ones who are able to do good selflessly and without demanding anything in return. Little people do a lot of good deeds, which once again remind each of us that it is kindness that will save the world. And, probably, we definitely have something to learn from them. And today I will tell you the story of one little hero who will definitely restore faith in goodness and people. But about everything in order. At first glance, Ken is a very ordinary 8-year-old boy who was born and raised in the Philippines in a poor family. And while the other kids were wasting their time playing computer games and stuff, this guy did something that made the whole world talk about him. The child grew up in a full and happy family, and the parents could not get enough of their son, but soon they began to seriously worry about one question. The boy began to leave the house every day, and no one could even imagine where he was going. This moment was very disturbing for the parents. His father often asked Young where he was going and what he was doing, of course. But the kid always gave vague answers. In general, it was clear that he was trying to hide something from his parents. If Ken's trips were rare, then maybe his parents wouldn't be so worried. But the child left every day in an unknown direction, without really explaining anything. Also, the parents began to notice that with the departure of their son, there were fewer and fewer products in the house. In general, it couldn't go on like this, and something had to be done. After all, father and mother were seriously worried about this issue. And imagine yourself in their place. Different thoughts came into our heads, and sometimes even the worst ones. That's why my wife and I consulted and decided to follow up on my son, Joe Lower, Ken's father, later said. And then the day came when the boy was packing his backpack again and said that he was going for a walk with friends outside, but, of course, the father understood that this was not really the case, and decided to follow him. He was very careful, because he understood that Ken should not notice him. But what the man saw next surprised him and even shocked him a little. Ken left the house and walked past the children who were playing in the yard, then went out onto the main street and headed towards the outskirts of the city. His whole journey was about 3 kilometers, which seriously made his father nervous. Besides, the place was abandoned and remote. And, of course, John couldn't even think what an 8-year-old boy should actually do here. I remember hiding behind a big tree and watching Ken from afar. I could only imagine the worst. But what happened next, to be honest, pleasantly surprised me. Ken's father said. The boy took off his backpack and began to take out food. He called someone several times, and out of nowhere, huge stray dogs and small puppies began to run to Ken from different directions. I was very scared. There were so many of them, and they were so huge that Ken couldn't even be seen among them. I thought I needed to save my son. But after a moment I noticed that they ran up to him without any aggression, wagging their tails and licking my boy. Almost with tears in his eyes, the boy's father said. It was just an amazing picture. Well, I think, as you have already understood, it turned out that the child traveled such a long way every day just to feed the hungry dogs. I was proud of my son in my soul, Joe Lower stated. And it's worth saying that he didn't give himself away then. The man also, unnoticed by his son, returned home. But now he was calm. When Ken came back to the house, his father decided to tell him that he knows where the guy goes every day. I told him that I didn't mind at all that he brought food to stray animals, as long as he was careful and didn't go out late at night. But then none of them could even imagine what and how this whole story would turn out for them. In turn, of course, the guy was very pleased with the approval from his parents, but he was saddened that he could not help absolutely all homeless animals. And he wanted it very much. It became much easier for me that now my parents knew what I was doing. I would really like to open a shelter for homeless animals. But Dad said that it takes a lot of money, which, of course, the family does not have, recalled 8-year-old Ken, but looking at his son and his great desire to help everyone possible, the guy's father decided to act. At least he was trying to fulfill Ken's cherished wish of creating a shelter. Joe understood that it would not be easy, both physically and financially. But I decided to try it anyway. A few days after the latest events, the man posted a post on Facebook about what a good deed his son was doing. And soon Ken's solidarity action went viral, and people from all over the world began sending donations to the guy. Internet users admired the young guy's business. Many have even started sending money for food for stray animals. And every day there were more and more people who would like to help in this noble cause. With the help of his father and caring people, a fairly decent amount was collected, and, as a result, there were enough finances not only for food for homeless animals, but even for the opening of a small shelter. And just a few months later, Ken's dream came true. I couldn't even ask for more, Ken said of his animal shelter, where within 6 months of opening there were more than 200 four-legged pets. But, I think, as you understand, it was far from the end. In March 2014 Ken opened his first large specialized facility for the protection of abandoned animals in the Philippines. To do this, he managed to raise a decent amount and even buy a piece of land, where the shelter was later built. After such an event, at that time, only a 13-year-old guy decided to post his post on Facebook. There were a lot of photos of the new shelter with a lot of stray dogs, but everyone was especially touched by Ken's words to the post. I am very glad that there are people in the world who, like me, worry about stray animals. My father told me that I would be able to open a shelter only when I became an adult. But with his help and the support of hundreds of caring people, it happened much earlier. It is also worth noting that the good deeds of the boy did not go unnoticed by the local authorities. After that, his project was even included in government funding, and now the shelter also receives assistance from the authorities of the Philippines, but this was far from the end. Many businessmen were, to put it mildly, shocked about such kind deeds of a young schoolboy and also agreed to help financially. And it's worth saying that the opening of new centers to help homeless animals is just around the corner. Ken plans to open several more private pets, where the foundlings are put in order and treated, after which they try to find new families where they will be loved. But Ken calls the opening of shelters across the country his main goal. In order for there to be no homeless four-legged friends on the streets of cities at all, and each of them had their own house. To date, Ken, his family and volunteers have already rescued more than 1,000 stray animals in the shelter that needed human attention and love. Among them are not only dogs, but also cats, and all those who need help. All the work at the shelter Ken performs with great pleasure, while managing to combine his occupation with his studies. He even has several employees, and Ken himself is proudly listed as the director of the shelter. Such an activity brings great pleasure to the guy, and as a reward he receives the unconditional love of animals and the admiration of people all over the world. Well, this, at first glance, is a simple story that shows us all that kindness is actually expressed in the power that still exists in our world. For Ken, this is helping homeless animals. He does not just love them, but loves them so much that his love manifests itself in action. And looking at this ordinary schoolboy, I think it's not worth saying that anything is possible, even if you're only 8 years old and you come from a poor family. The most important thing is desire and action, and then everything will work out for sure. Friends, how do you feel about this guy's occupation? Be sure to write your opinion in the comments. Also, do not forget to subscribe to our channel and see you soon. Bye.